Thank you all for coming. Thanks to Will and Anthony for having me. This is going to start off with a bit of a story, kind of how I got started, and hopefully that's going to turn into something that maybe you'll bring back to the people that you work with, or maybe it'll affect you right now in the middle of your career path. So I was just beginning my career in life. I had a job. I was working at a little supermarket in this town that I grew up in. And I ended up getting into a really big argument with my boss at the time. I was a stock boy. I was really young. Got into an argument, ended up walking home. So I walk home, and I walk in the house, and first thing I see there is my mom, and my mom's like, "You have to have a job for the summer. This isn't going to happen." So we hop in the car, and she drives me around town. We end up pulling up in front of a little fancy Italian restaurant, and I get out, and I go in, and at the front desk was kind of like a little service bar / hostess stand thing, and the guy at the front desk is this really big Italian-American, really imposing type guy, and he's like, "What can you do?" I said, "I can't really do anything. I don't have any experience. I'll do whatever you need me to do." So he gives me an application. I fill it out. I go home, and I really don't think anything of it. Phone rings a few hours later, and it's Frank. And Frank says, "Can you come in tonight?" I said, "Absolutely." So I get ready to get going. It's Saturday night. I've never done this before. I run out. I grab the required white shirt, black pants that we all kind of had in that early stage of our restaurant career. And I go in. So I go into the restaurant. Frank shows me around. He gives me like a minute or two of directions, pops me in front of a bunch of linens to iron, and I sit there and I just start ironing. I don't even know if I'd ever ironed at that point in my life. So I sit there and I'm trying to figure it out. I think a couple times he came back and like had to tell me, that's not how you iron. So at some point, one of the staff members comes by, grabs me and says, "Hey, let's go upstairs, we're gonna go eat." I'm psyched. Like, there's food coming, I'm gonna eat before work. This did not happen at the supermarket. I'm really happy about that. So I go upstairs, we sit down with the rest of the staff. It's kind of a smaller restaurant, probably 5 or 6 of us, max 10, sitting around this table. And I sit down, spaghetti and tomato sauce, like super excited. If they'd given me some chicken parm, I would have worked for free that night. It was good. So I sat down, I'm really happy, I'm eating, and there's something interesting about the sauce. I didn't know it at the time. I was learning an early lesson. If the food's good, just eat it. Don't ask later what it is. Just enjoy. And if I'd known at the time what tripe was, I probably wouldn't have enjoyed it as much as I did. So that night, 7, 8 o'clock rolls around. The guy who's training me, the waiter who's training me, gets into a screaming match with Frank, who is the chef and the owner, and he walks out of service. So it's Saturday night, it's super busy. The guy that's training me is out the door, and I don't know what's going on. I end up spilling an entire pitcher of water on some lady. I mess up all kinds of stuff, but at the end of the day, Frank comes by and gives me $95 in cash, and I was totally hooked. I mean, I'm 15, I just got $95 in cash. I kind of had fun that night, and I absolutely loved it. I spent the next 4 years of my life working in that restaurant, learning about all kinds of things that probably a 15-year-old doesn't necessarily need to know about at that stage of their lives. This was my first restaurant family. And in fact, this restaurant was run by Frank and his family. So it was Frank, his brother Sal, and their brother-in-law, Franco. And Sal and Franco were the head waiters. And they all really took me under their wings. Franco was kind of the really smooth, like just off the boat Italian guy, waiter, who was fantastic. He was funny, ladies loved him, he was an excellent salesperson. People came in for his experience, the Franco experience, just as much as they did for Frank's food. And Frank was a self-taught chef. He learned from his mom. He was a really savvy, kind of old school business guy, knew how to make $1 to 15 cents, gave you all kinds of tips that right now you would probably pass judgment on me if I was to say we did some of that stuff at Del Posto, but he taught me all that stuff, and we don't use those techniques, but I I didn't know at that point that I was going to be spending the next 20 years of my life surrounded by these two different families, my restaurant family and my home family. In fact, I must have mixed them up at one point or another because I ended up marrying my wife, who I met in my restaurant family, and now she's in my home family. And so that's how it started. Lessons from that experience continue to inform my day today. In the next kind of few paragraphs, I'm going to offer you guys a bit of advice about how joining, creating, and cultivating a really strong family environment can lead to great things within the restaurant. So first piece of advice, challenge yourself to treat your restaurant family a little bit like your real family and stick it out through difficult times. If I look back on my path and the way that my road has taken me, I committed real time to a lot of the jobs that I had along the way. If you don't spend some time inside a restaurant, you're not going to get the system, the philosophies. You're not going to understand how to move within the structure. You might not ever win the trust of your colleagues, and you probably will never find a mentor. If your resume has 6 jobs in 5 years on it, you have to ask yourself, what's the problem? This is a business of people. Customers, colleagues, your managers, it's all about people. That's the entire skill. And if you don't like spending time around other people, you're probably in the wrong field. Working in a normal restaurant, kind of on a normal, typical restaurant schedule, you're going to spend just as much time with your, just as much of your waking hours with your restaurant family as you are with your home family. And the difference between those two families is that the restaurant family, you get to choose. You can choose to be part of this family, and if you don't like it, you can get up and go, and you can go to another one and find a new family to love. And you can do that for a while, but at a certain point, I urge you to try and just stick it out. With 100% certainty, it's probably the most important thing that I'm going to be able to give anyone in the room that's a little early in their career path. You have to stick it out. Spend some time in a really great restaurant, an established restaurant, one that's been around the block, one that you know is probably kind of organized. Don't necessarily run off to the hottest new restaurant with the new chef and the new owner because they have their own systems to work out. And to learn and to get a foundation is really hard when that restaurant's trying to figure out how to operate on its own. So start at the bottom. Learn the roles. Climb the ladder. Take note of what's not working in that restaurant. You're always going to be learning what to do and what not to do. Second big piece of advice. If you're going to go to work, you might as well show up and you have to crush it every single day. One of the coolest parts about working in the restaurant is that we're all in this together. And if you see, the way Will and Daniel are, that's a team. We're all in this stuff together. Good times, bad times, kitchen, dining room. It's all the same. Show up with your game face on and be present. Don't let your life outside the 4 walls of that restaurant affect your success in the dining room. Don't let stupid things make you look bad in front of the managers. Show up on time every day. Learn the menus. Learn the wine. Get into it. Learn the way the restaurant operates. Learn to embrace the different types of people you're going to work with, as well as the different types of guests that you're going to come across. One day, after spending a bunch of time inside one of these family units, you're going to get to that special role of manager. This is a really special place where more work and more stress usually leads to less money, at least to begin. When you make that transition to management, remember that you are still part of the restaurant family. Except now you're a parent or maybe a cool uncle or an aunt. The levels in your restaurant might be different in terms of the hierarchy, but either way, you're now an adult. And as a manager, it's your responsibility to make sure that everybody else is doing their job. Your team's crossing the T's, dotting the I's. It means that you have to now teach, guide, and lead the family. Third big piece of advice, demonstrate genuine care. The team needs feedback. It's going to come from you. It's not always going to be formal review-style feedback. It's not always going to be welcome. But as the parents, you're helping to guide the family in the direction that it wants to go. Approach this feedback from a real place of care. Listen to what might be holding someone back. Try and figure out realistic ways that you can help get them where they need to be. you'll find that it can be easier to nudge somebody in the right direction than to completely replace them altogether. Let them know where they stand and give them the tools to get where they need to be. It's amazing to watch someone who you've coached turn things around. That's a magical experience for me as a manager, to sit down with somebody who was on a path, they were on the outs, and a couple of conversations later, they're a rock star because they just didn't realize what they were giving up. Restaurants aren't rocket science. They're people science. And the better you get at understanding that, the better you'll be able to deal with every one of the family members, and the better you'll be at your job. There's going to be hard conversations. There's going to be ones you don't want to have. As a note, if you find yourself in a situation where you don't want to have a certain conversation, that's a red flag. Chances are it's extremely important. Have the conversation as quickly as you possibly can. When you finally get into one of these little sessions, remember that you were once one of the line staff. Don't become a crazy manager. Don't be a screamer. It doesn't get you anywhere. As a manager, there's never a reason to get into a back and forth with one of your employees. There's no reason to lower your credentials to their level. You're a boss. Act like it. Be in charge. Be empathetic. Be understanding. But be convincing and be in charge. Listen, get your point across, make sure that you're very clearly understood. As a parent, it's your job not to be a friend, but to be a guide and a trustworthy leader. With hard work, one day you're going to get to general manager. As GM, you get to be the grandfather. I had a reference to Lord Tywin here, but my hospitality manager, Katie, reminded me that he's a terrible person and likes to kill his children. So she reminded me that grandfathers are supposed to offer sage words, advice, and the occasional piece of hard candy, which leads me to my fourth piece of advice. A GM's job is to protect the livelihoods of the family. This statement informs everything that I do. It keeps my vision clear when I have to make decisions that I'm a little uncomfortable making or don't know what the right answer is. When we change prices, when we hire someone, when we promote somebody, or even when we fire someone, the statement helps me get through all of that. It's the GM's responsibility to make sure that the restaurant is operating at its best and everybody is performing to their best for the better of the entire group. Managers are managing, waitstaff is warm and gracious. They're ready to handle any critic, professional or amateur, that walks through the door. All of those things lead to difficult decisions. As the GM, it's your role to defend the jobs of those who work for you from those who would jeopardize those jobs. And you have to be ready to make those decisions for the betterment of the family. So why did we spend all this time talking about the restaurant family? Because the restaurant family is the single most important asset that you have in your restaurant. If your family's 20 or 200, each one of those people has something great to offer your business. By cultivating a family culture that supports itself, that inspires, and leads by example, you'll be able to focus your energies in other areas. By creating a culture of internal promotion, of leadership, you only have to feed the system in one direction. The experienced lead the inexperienced. That's really important. Last piece of advice. Give the family a reason to stay. The fact is, no matter what, kids are going to leave the nest. Sometimes you're going to help push them out of the nest, or you're going to put them in another home. It's going to happen. But if you give them responsibilities, you give them opportunities, and a place that they really enjoy coming to every day, they're going to stay part of your family structure longer. Then, one day, when you're tired and need a break, you can be handing them the keys to your home, and you can trust that they're prepared, and you've given them the tools to succeed. Thank you very much.